My name is Victoria. I am 32 years old. I woke up in a luxury hotel room in Costa Rica, completely alone. My passport, my phone, my wallet, and my laptop were gone. Pinned to the empty pillow next to me was a handwritten note from my husband and my parents. It read, "We have your company, your accounts, and your life. You are a ghost now. Don't try to come back." They had drugged me, stranded me in a foreign country, and flown back to New York to legally declare me missing and incapacitated so they could seize my $60 million global logistics empire. They thought they had buried me alive without shedding a single drop of blood. They had absolutely no idea that the laptop they stole was a federal bait device, and the moment they powered it on in the United States, they triggered a multi-agency international manhunt. I want you to freeze the frame right there. Imagine waking up in a king-sized bed with the sound of the Pacific Ocean crashing outside your window. Your head is pounding with the heavy chemical fog of a sedative. You reach across the crisp white sheets for the man you married, the man who was supposed to protect you. He isn't there. You stumble to the nightstand to check your phone. It isn't there. Your luggage is gone. Your purse is gone. You are thousands of miles from home in a country where you do not speak the language, stripped of your identity, your money, and your connection to the outside world. Look closely at the note left on the pillow. Recognize the handwriting. It's your mother's perfectly practiced, elegant cursive. It wasn't a sudden, panicked escape. It was a meticulously coordinated assassination of my existence, executed by the people who shared my DNA and the man who shared my bed. They expected me to panic. They expected me to wander out onto the streets of San Jose, a hysterical, undocumented American tourist without a dime to her name, begging the local police for help. They expected me to end up in a foreign psychiatric hold, which would provide the exact proof of mental instability they needed to finalize their corporate coup back in New York. They had absolutely no idea that trying to medically kidnap and financially erase the chief architect of a federal logistics network would result in all of them facing decades in a federal penitentiary for international wire fraud, kidnapping, and cyber terrorism. But to understand how a horrific betrayal in a tropical paradise ended with the FBI crashing a televised press conference in Manhattan, we need to rewind. Before I take you back to the exact moment this monstrous psychological warfare began, please take a quick second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, but only if you believe that karma is best served ice cold, legally binding, and with a side of absolute truth. Also, drop a comment down below and let me know, where in the world are you watching from right now and what time is it there? I read every single one. Now, let me tell you how I became the quiet, devastating architect of my toxic family's total ruin. Long before the massive corporate valuations, the government contracts, and the corner office overlooking Central Park, my life was defined by the harsh, exhausting reality of being the designated ATM in a household obsessed with the illusion of upper-class superiority. I grew up in an imposing, aggressively manicured estate in the wealthy suburbs of Westchester, New York. From the outside, my parents, Charles and Beatrice, projected an image of perfect, untouchable, old money respectability. My father was a commercial real estate broker who loved fine cigars and exclusive country clubs. My mother was a socialite whose full-time job was maintaining appearances and pretending we were richer than we actually were. But inside the walls of our estate, the psychological dynamic was a terrifying, suffocating labyrinth of conditional love and exploitation. There was my younger sister, Serena. If you looked up the clinical definition of a golden child, her picture would be perfectly framed next to it. Serena was effortlessly beautiful, violently allergic to hard work, and possessed a deeply ingrained, delusional sense of entitlement. She walked through life leaving a trail of expensive perfume and massive credit card debt. While I was forced to work a miserable retail job in high school to pay for my own textbooks, Serena was given a brand new Mercedes convertible for passing her junior year. The psychological dynamic in our household relied heavily on a concept called conditional self-worth. I was the scapegoat. I was only acknowledged when I was solving a problem or paying for a mistake. If Serena crashed her car while driving drunk, Beatrice wouldn't discipline her. She would look at me with wide, pitiful eyes and say, "Victoria, sweetie, your sister is just so fragile. She's highly sensitive. She doesn't have your thick skin. You just have to be the bigger person and use your savings to cover her deductible so your father doesn't get sued. Don't cause drama where there doesn't need to be any. Family comes first." They didn't want peace. They wanted my silent, endless financial compliance. They pathologized my anger and weaponized my empathy. So, the moment I turned 18, I ran. I didn't walk away, I sprinted. I refused their toxic requests for money and went to war with my own poverty. I paid my way through college by working night shifts in shipping warehouses, learning the intricate, chaotic blood flow of international logistics. I channeled my childhood trauma, the constant need for security and control, into my career. I built a global logistics and supply chain management firm from the ground up. We specialized in securing and transporting highly sensitive materials for major tech companies and government contractors. I look at a complex, chaotic global supply chain and see the invisible cracks hiding between the data. By the time I was 32, my firm held a valuation of $60 million. I was wealthy, fiercely independent, and commanded a room full of men twice my age. But independence can be incredibly lonely. And in my desperate, stupid desire to build a normal family, I married Liam. Liam was an executive at a mid-tier marketing firm. He was handsome, charming, and possessed an easygoing demeanor that I mistook for stability. I didn't realize that beneath his polished exterior was a deeply insecure, lazy man who was secretly intimidated by my earning power. I paid the mortgage on our luxury penthouse. I bought his car. I funded our lifestyle. I didn't know it, but my financial dominance was emasculating him. And in his pathetic search to feel like a powerful man, he found the perfect, willing audience in my sister. Serena, who thrived on stealing anything that belonged to me, was more than happy to stroke his fragile ego behind my back. The stage for their ultimate betrayal was set when my father's real estate business finally collapsed. Charles had been secretly hemorrhaging money for years due to his arrogant, high-risk investments. He was millions of dollars in debt, and his creditors were getting aggressive. He didn't have the cash to save his failing empire or to fund Serena's lavish lifestyle. But they knew who did. They knew the difficult daughter they had marginalized was currently sitting on a $60 million empire. They couldn't just ask me for the money. They knew I would refuse. So they decided they needed to steal the company. But to do that legally, they needed to remove me from the equation entirely. They needed to prove that I was mentally unfit to lead, and they needed Liam, my husband, to assume emergency executive control. The gaslighting campaign began slowly. Running a global logistics firm is exhausting. I was working 80-hour weeks, managing international time zones. I was tired. They used my exhaustion as their primary weapon. Liam started making small, insidious comments. "Victoria, you're not sleeping. You're snapping at everyone. You left the front door unlocked last night." I hadn't. He had unlocked it. Beatrice would call my office, pretending to be a concerned mother, telling my executive assistants that she was worried I was having a nervous breakdown. Charles would tell their country club friends that the stress of the business was driving me to the brink of a psychotic episode. They were meticulously laying the groundwork, establishing a public narrative of my mental decline. Then came the intervention. I came home one evening to find Liam, Beatrice, Charles, and Serena sitting in my living room, looking incredibly somber. "Victoria, sweetie," Beatrice began, her voice dripping with manufactured tears. "We love you so much, but you are burning out. You are paranoid, you are exhausted, and you are not thinking clearly. Liam tells us you're barely sleeping." "I am fine," I snapped, the exhaustion making my voice sharp. "I am managing a global supply chain crisis. It's my job." "It's destroying you, Vic," Liam said softly, reaching out to hold my hand. I didn't notice Serena smirking in the background. "We've all talked. We booked a private, exclusive retreat in Costa Rica. Just the family, 10 days, off the grid. No phones, no emails, just healing. You need this, or you're going to end up in a hospital." I resisted. I fought them for 3 days. but the pressure was relentless. The guilt tripping was suffocating. I finally, foolishly, agreed to go, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they genuinely cared about my health. I had absolutely no idea that I was packing my bags for my own execution. We flew into San Jose on a private charter and took a helicopter to an ultra-exclusive, hyper-isolated eco-resort nestled deep within the Costa Rican rainforest, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The resort was stunning, designed for absolute privacy. No other guests in sight, just our family in a sprawling, multi-level luxury villa. The first 2 days were strangely peaceful. Liam was attentive, rubbing my shoulders and pouring my coffee. Beatrice and Charles didn't ask for money. Serena kept to herself. I actually began to let my guard down, allowing the exhaustion of the past year to catch up with me. I started to sleep. On the third night, we had a private dinner catered on the terrace of our villa. The sun had set, the jungle around us alive with the sound of cicadas and crashing waves. Liam handed me a glass of expensive red wine. To healing, Vic. He smiled, clinking his glass against mine. To a fresh start. I drank the wine. It tasted slightly bitter, a heavy, metallic undertone masking the fruit, but I was too tired to care. Within 30 minutes, my body felt like it was filled with lead. My vision blurred, the edges of the terrace swimming out of focus. I tried to stand up from the table, but my legs wouldn't support my weight. I crashed back into the chair, my head lolling to the side. Through the rapidly thickening fog of the sedative, the world slowed down into a terrifying, muted nightmare. I saw Liam stand up. The charming, loving husband vanished, replaced by a cold, efficient stranger. He didn't rush to my side. He didn't ask if I was okay. He simply reached into my purse, which was resting on the floor next to my chair, and pulled out my passport, my wallet, and my cell phone. Beatrice stood up next, her face devoid of any maternal warmth. She looked down at me, her eyes flat and calculating. "Is she under?" Charles asked, his voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. "She's out," Liam replied, slipping my passport into his jacket pocket. Serena walked over, holding my sleek silver corporate laptop. She looked at Liam and then, right in front of my fading eyes, she leaned in and kissed him. A deep, passionate, familiar kiss. "Let's go," Serena whispered, smiling against my husband's lips. "The charter pilot is waiting." I tried to scream. I tried to reach out and grab Liam's jacket, but my muscles were completely paralyzed. The darkness rushed up to swallow me, and the last thing I heard was the sound of my family dragging their luggage toward the front door, leaving me to rot in the jungle. Which brings us right back to the moment I woke up. The sunlight streaming through the sheer curtains was blinding. My head throbbed with a sickening chemical hangover. I stumbled out of the king-sized bed, my legs shaking, and found the handwritten note pinned to the pillow next to me. "We have your company, your accounts, and your life. You are a ghost now. Don't try to come back." Let me pause right here and break the fourth wall. Imagine waking up in a foreign country, your body heavy with the residue of a powerful sedative administered by your own husband. You are stripped of your passport, your money, your phone, and your identity. You realize that the people you loved most in the world just conspired to leave you stranded and legally erased. What do you do in that exact moment? Do you collapse on the floor and weep? Do you run out into the jungle screaming for help? How do you fight back against a betrayal so absolute it feels like a physical murder? Tell me your verdict in the comments below. Trust me, realizing you aren't alone in this nightmare helps, because for exactly 10 minutes, I allowed myself to be a victim. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the cruel handwritten note, and I let the tears fall. I mourned my marriage. I mourned the parents I never truly had. But at 10 minutes and 1 second, the crying stopped. The frightened, abandoned daughter retreated into the dark, and the chief executive officer took the wheel. They expected me to act like a frantic tourist. They expected me to run to the local police, hysterical and undocumented, screaming about a stolen company in broken Spanish. They knew that if a woman without a passport or identification goes to the authorities in a foreign country claiming her family stole her multi-million-dollar empire, she will be placed in a psychiatric hold. And that psychiatric hold would be the exact documentation Liam needed to prove to a New York judge that I had suffered a total mental breakdown and abandoned my life. They thought they had checkmated me, but they forgot one crucial, devastating detail. I am a logistical architect. I do not panic. I assess the assets I have left. I didn't have my physical wallet, but I possess an eidetic memory for numbers. I knew the 16 digits, the expiration date, and the CVV code of my emergency offshore corporate black card by heart. I washed my face, put on a clean sundress, and walked out of the villa. I didn't run. I walked calmly to the resort's main lobby. I approached the concierge, a polite Costa Rican man in a crisp uniform. I didn't tell him I was robbed. I smiled, projecting absolute, untouchable authority. "Good morning," I said smoothly. "My husband and family had to leave early on an emergency charter flight. I unfortunately misplaced my physical handbag in the rush, but I need to extend the booking for the villa for 2 more nights, and I need access to a private, secure computer terminal." I recited the numbers of the black card from memory. The concierge typed them in. The card, linked to a heavily encrypted offshore account that Liam didn't even know existed, cleared instantly. "Of course, madam." The concierge smiled, handing me a keycard to the business center. "Right this way." I locked myself in the business center. I didn't email my company. I didn't email Liam. I logged into an encrypted dark web communication portal I used for high-risk international shipping logistics. I needed a fixer. I needed someone who operated outside the standard legal parameters. Someone who could navigate international borders without a passport. I reached out to a contact in my network, and within an hour, I was connected to Elias Thorne. Elias was a former Interpol agent who now operated as a high-end crisis manager for billionaires and politicians in South America. He specialized in extracting people from impossible situations. I wired Elias $50,000. "I am stranded in Costa Rica without identification," I typed into the encrypted chat. "My husband stole my corporate laptop and flew back to New York. I need an emergency passport, and I need a secure flight back to the US by Friday. Do not involve local authorities." Elias replied 3 minutes later. "Understood. A driver will be at your resort in 4 hours. Be ready." While I waited for Elias's extraction team, I initiated Phase 2 of my survival plan. I logged into the back end of my company's server infrastructure. Liam and my father thought they had stolen the keys to the kingdom when they took my sleek, silver corporate laptop. They thought that because my laptop was logged into the company's financial accounts, they could just open it in New York and start wiring millions of dollars into their own shell companies. They had absolutely no idea what kind of machine they were holding. My company manages logistics for federal defense contractors. My laptop wasn't just a computer, it was a designated federal bait device. It was hardwired with a specialized dormant Trojan horse program designed to protect highly classified shipping routes. If the laptop was taken outside of my physical proximity, which was linked to a biometric tracker surgically implanted in my wrist, the standard operating system would appear completely normal. The thief could open files, look at bank accounts, and even attempt to initiate wire transfers. But the moment the laptop connected to a US-based IP address without my biometric proximity authentication, the Trojan horse activated. It wouldn't just block the transfer. It would silently, instantly mirror the laptop's screen and aggressively route the IP location, the keystroke data, and the attempted wire fraud details directly to the Cyberterrorism Division of the Department of Commerce and the FBI. Liam wasn't carrying a laptop back to New York. He was carrying a federal tracking beacon. And the moment he tried to steal my money, he was going to legally classify himself as an international cyber terrorist. I sat back in the resort's business center, looking out at the beautiful Pacific Ocean, and I smiled. The trap was fully armed. Now, I just needed to let them dig their own graves. Elias Thorne's extraction team arrived exactly 4 hours later. They didn't arrive in a flashy black SUV. They arrived in an inconspicuous, beat-up Toyota Hilux. The driver, a quiet, heavily tattooed man who spoke very little English, handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a temporary, perfectly forged identification card and a prepaid burner phone. I left the luxury eco-resort without checking out, slipping into the passenger seat of the truck. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in clandestine movement. Elias's network moved me from the isolated jungle to a secure safe house in San Jose. There, Elias himself, a sharp-featured man with cold, calculating eyes, met me with a specialized lawyer who had contacts within the U.S. Embassy. Because I had memorized my social security number, my offshore account routing numbers, and my global corporate tax ID, Elias's lawyer was able to fast-track an emergency temporary passport through a special channels liaison at the embassy. I didn't exist as Victoria, the missing, mentally unstable wife. I existed as Victoria, a high-clearance federal contractor who required immediate repatriation due to a security breach. While I was securing my passage home, my family was busy putting on the performance of a lifetime in New York. I bought a cheap laptop in San Jose and monitored the fallout. Liam, Charles, Beatrice, and Serena hadn't just returned to the U.S. They had immediately launched a highly coordinated, incredibly aggressive PR and legal campaign. They hosted a somber, tearful press conference outside my company's Manhattan headquarters. I watched the live stream on my burner laptop, feeling a cold, clinical disgust as my family weaponized my disappearance. Liam stood at the podium, looking exhausted and heartbroken. He held up a framed photo of us on our wedding day. My wife, Victoria, has been suffering from severe, undiagnosed mental health issues for the past year, Liam told the flashing cameras, his voice breaking perfectly. The stress of running this company broke her. We took her on a healing retreat to Costa Rica, hoping to save her. But 2 nights ago, she suffered a psychotic break. She wandered out into the jungle alone. The local authorities are searching, but... He paused, wiping a fake tear from his eye. We fear the worst. Beatrice stood behind him, sobbing into Charles's shoulder. Serena looked appropriately devastated, playing the role of the grieving sister flawlessly. In light of this tragic, catastrophic event, Liam continued, shifting his tone from heartbroken husband to resolute leader, and possessing full medical power of attorney and executive spousal proxy, I am assuming immediate control as interim CEO of Victoria's company. I will ensure her legacy survives. They were establishing the narrative. They were painting me as a tragic, unstable woman who walked into the jungle to die, clearing the path for Liam to legally seize the $60 million empire. But behind closed doors, they weren't grieving, they were trying to cash out. The ping hit my encrypted server exactly 12 hours after their press conference. Liam had powered on my stolen corporate laptop inside his Manhattan penthouse. I watched the data stream in real time. He was attempting to access the primary corporate treasury accounts, trying to wire $15 million to a series of offshore shell companies registered in Serena's name. He typed in the transfer amounts. He hit execute. The screen on his end probably showed a loading icon. He probably smiled, thinking he had just successfully drained my life's work to fund his new life with my sister. He had no idea that the loading icon was a smokescreen. The moment he hit execute, the Trojan horse program activated. The laptop didn't communicate with my bank. It communicated directly with the federal cybersecurity servers. The program instantly flagged the transaction as an unauthorized, hostile breach of a federal defense contractor's financial network. It geolocated Liam's exact IP address in the penthouse, captured the keystrokes proving he was attempting to execute the wire fraud, and triggered a massive silent alarm at the FBI's cybercrimes division. Liam hadn't stolen my money. He had just officially, legally committed international wire fraud and attempted cyber terrorism. I closed my burner laptop in the San Jose safe house. Elias, I said, turning to the fixer who was standing by the window. I have my passport. I have my flight. It's time to go home and attend my own funeral. Elias smiled a sharp, dangerous smile. I'll arrange the reception. Let's break the fourth wall for a second. Imagine watching your own family stand on national television, weeping fake tears, telling the world you lost your mind and died in a jungle, all so they could steal your company. Imagine knowing that while they are playing the grieving victims, you hold the exact digital evidence that will send them to federal prison. Would you have called the police immediately to have them arrested quietly? Or would you have waited to maximize the public humiliation? Tell me your verdict in the comments, because I didn't want a quiet arrest. I wanted a public, undeniable execution. I flew back into the United States on a private charter arranged by Elias, bypassing standard commercial customs through a specialized contractor terminal. I didn't go home. I went straight to the Manhattan field office of the FBI. I didn't walk in looking like a traumatized, lost tourist. I walked in wearing a tailored, razor-sharp black Armani suit I had purchased that morning. I was flanked by 2 high-level corporate defense attorneys. I sat across from the lead cybercrimes investigator and laid out the entire, perfectly documented trap. I handed over the IP logs, the keystroke data, the offshore account routing numbers Serena had set up, and the medical records proving I had been drugged with a heavy military-grade sedative. The investigator looked at the file, then looked up at me. They attempted to wire $15 million out of a defense contractor's treasury account using a stolen device, and they publicly declared you missing. Yes, I replied calmly, and right now they are hosting an emergency shareholder meeting at my company headquarters to finalize the transfer of executive power. The investigator stood up, grabbing his badge. Let's go crash a meeting. The corporate headquarters of my logistics firm occupied the top 3 floors of a massive glass skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. The executive boardroom was an intimidating, beautiful space, walled entirely in glass, overlooking the city skyline. When I stepped off the private elevator onto the executive floor, the silence was absolute. I wasn't alone. I was flanked by Elias, my 2 corporate attorneys, and 6 armed federal agents wearing FBI windbreakers. I walked purposefully down the long hallway toward the glass boardroom. Inside, Liam was standing at the head of the massive mahogany table. He was wearing my father's expensive watch. Charles and Beatrice were sitting proudly near the front. Serena was sitting next to them, looking incredibly smug, already acting like the new queen of the empire. They were surrounded by my company's board of directors and several key investors. Liam was holding a pen, poised over a thick stack of legal documents, the official transfer of executive power. Victoria built this company from nothing, Liam was saying, his voice echoing through the glass walls, adopting his fake, mournful tone. And though she is lost to us, her vision will live on. I am honored to step in as CEO to protect her legacy. I pushed the heavy glass doors open. You don't need to protect my legacy, Liam, I said, my voice cutting through the silent room like a scalpel. I am perfectly capable of protecting it myself. The collective gasp that ripped through the boardroom was so violent it felt as if the oxygen had been physically vacuumed out of the room. The board members stared at me, their eyes wide with shock. A senior investor dropped his pen. But it was the reaction of my family that I will savor for the rest of my life. Liam, holding the pen over the executive transfer documents, froze entirely. The blood drained from his face with such terrifying speed that he looked like a corpse. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The pen slipped from his fingers, clattering loudly against the mahogany table. Charles and Beatrice looked as if they had just seen a ghost. Beatrice let out a short, hysterical shriek, clapping a hand over her mouth. Serena, the golden child who thought she had successfully stolen my husband and my empire, scrambled backward in her chair, her eyes wide with absolute, feral terror. They thought they had buried me in the jungle. Now, I was standing in my own boardroom, wearing an Armani suit, flanked by federal agents. Victoria, Liam finally stammered, his voice cracking, a high, panicked squeak. You're alive? How did you— He tried to recover, his survival instincts kicking in. He stepped forward, forcing a trembling, horrific smile onto his face, attempting to play the role of the relieved husband. Oh my God, Victoria, you're safe. We thought you were dead. We thought you had a breakdown. He reached his arms out, stepping toward me to embrace me. Stop right there, Liam. I commanded, my voice dropping an octave, radiating cold, absolute authority. I didn't step back. The lead FBI agent stepped forward, placing a hand on his duty belt. Liam stopped instantly. I didn't have a mental breakdown, Liam, I stated clinically, projecting my voice so every single board member and investor in the room could hear the truth. I was drugged with a heavy sedative. My passport, phone, and wallet were stolen by my own family. I was abandoned in a foreign country so you could fly back here and fabricate a story about my insanity. That's a lie, Charles roared, standing up from his chair, trying to summon his old, arrogant authority. He pointed a shaking finger at me. She's lying. She's having a psychotic episode right now. Security, get her out of here. I'm not having an episode, Charles, I replied smoothly, not breaking eye contact with my husband. I am simply executing a security protocol. I looked at Liam. Did you really think I would build a global logistics firm handling sensitive federal data and not put a failsafe on my primary device? Did you think you could just open my laptop and steal $15 million? Liam's knees visibly buckled. He grabbed the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. I don't know what you're talking about. You logged into my corporate treasury account at 9:14 p.m. last night from our penthouse, I detailed, my voice echoing in the dead silent room like a judge reading a guilty verdict. You attempted to wire $15 million to 3 offshore shell companies registered in Serena's name. Serena let out a sharp, horrified cry, looking wildly at her parents. The moment you hit execute, Liam, you didn't transfer the money, I continued, twisting the knife legally and without an ounce of remorse. My laptop is a registered federal bait device. It triggered a Trojan horse program that immediately forwarded your IP address, your keystrokes, and the fraudulent wire request directly to the Cybercrimes Division of the FBI. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. The investors looked at my family not with pity, but with profound, disgusted horror. You didn't just steal my company, Liam, I said softly, delivering the final, devastating blow. You committed international wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and attempted cyber terrorism against a federal defense contractor. The lead FBI agent stepped forward, holding up a thick stack of warrants. Liam Vance, Serena Thorne, Charles and Beatrice Thorne, the agent announced, his voice booming over the stunned boardroom. You are all under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, kidnapping, and unauthorized access to protected financial systems. No, please, Beatrice screamed, scrambling out of her chair, trying to run toward the door. 2 agents blocked her path, grabbing her arms. Mom! Serena shrieked, bursting into hysterical tears as a female agent pulled her arms behind her back. Click, click. The handcuffs locked around the golden child's wrists. Charles tried to fight, puffing his chest out, yelling about his lawyers, but he was swiftly wrestled against the glass wall and cuffed. The arrogant patriarch was reduced to a red-faced, sweating criminal, but Liam didn't fight. He collapsed to the floor, weeping openly, sobbing like a child. He looked up at me from his knees, his hands cuffed behind his back, tears streaming down his face. Victoria, please, Liam sobbed, begging for mercy in front of the board members he had tried to impress. I'm sorry, I love you, they made me do it. It was your parents' idea, please don't do this to me. I looked down at the man I had married. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt the profound, euphoric relief of a surgeon who had just successfully excised a massive, malignant tumor. You chose my sister, Liam, I said coldly. And you chose to leave me in the jungle. Enjoy federal prison. I hear they have terrible Wi-Fi. I turned my back on him. I didn't watch as they dragged my sobbing husband, my screaming mother, my ruined sister, and my disgraced father out of the boardroom. I looked at the stunned board of directors and the wealthy investors. I walked over to the mahogany table, picked up the thick stack of transfer of executive power documents Liam had been about to sign, and calmly ripped them in half. Gentlemen, I said, offering a professional, polite smile to the board. I apologize for the dramatic interruption. The security breach has been permanently neutralized. Now, if we could please review the quarterly projections. I have a company to run. Let's pause one last time. I stood in my own boardroom, watching the FBI drag my toxic family and my cheating husband out in handcuffs, completely dismantling their lives with the very trap they sprang themselves. Have you ever had to execute a brutal, uncompromising boundary to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to love you? Did you show them mercy, or did you drop the receipts and let the law handle them? Tell me your verdict in the comments, because let me tell you what happened in the aftermath of that spectacular raid. The federal justice system does not negotiate with arrogance, and it certainly does not forgive international wire fraud. Because the evidence I provided was cryptographically verified and automatically logged by federal servers, the prosecution was swift and merciless. Liam, terrified of spending decades in a maximum security prison, immediately turned on my family. He took a plea deal, testifying that Charles and Beatrice had orchestrated the drugging and kidnapping in Costa Rica. Despite his cooperation, because he was the one who physically executed the wire fraud attempt on a federal bait device, Liam was sentenced to 12 years in a federal penitentiary. Serena, the golden child who thought she was going to be a millionaire, was indicted as a co-conspirator. The shell companies were in her name. She wept in the courtroom claiming she was just a victim, but ignorance is not a defense against federal fraud. She was sentenced to 7 years. Her designer wardrobe and whatever assets she had left were seized to pay her legal fees. Charles and Beatrice faced the most devastating downfall of all. They were charged with kidnapping across international lines and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Their remaining assets, including their massive estate in Westchester, were seized by the federal government under civil forfeiture laws. Charles, the arrogant patriarch, was sentenced to 15 years. Beatrice was sentenced to 10. The high society friends they had spent their lives trying to impress abandoned them instantly, terrified of the scandal. They were left with absolutely nothing. As for me, my divorce from Liam was finalized swiftly. Because he was facing federal indictments for attempting to defraud me, he was legally barred from seeking any spousal support or claiming any marital assets. I walked away with 100% of my company, my penthouses, and my wealth intact. I retained Elias Thorne, the fixer who had helped me in Costa Rica, as my permanent head of global security. My company thrived. The incident, rather than hurting my reputation, cemented my status in the corporate world as a brilliant, utterly ruthless CEO who builds impenetrable systems. My firm's valuation doubled within the year. Looking back, waking up alone in that hotel room in Costa Rica was the most terrifying moment of my life. But it taught me a profound, agonizing lesson about conditional love and the absolute necessity of ironclad boundaries. When you grow up as the scapegoat, toxic families will try to convince you that your only value is your utility. They will use your skills, your money, and your very identity, all while telling you that you are fundamentally unlovable. They rely on your desperate need for their approval to keep you compliant. They mistook my empathy for weakness. They thought that because I loved them, I wouldn't fight back. But empathy without boundaries is just self-destruction. If you are watching this and you are currently trapped in a family dynamic where your sacrifices are ignored, where a golden child is worshipped, or where your partner demands your loyalty while secretly plotting your ruin, hear me now. You owe them absolutely nothing. Blood is not a suicide pact. You are allowed to stop fixing their messes. You are allowed to stop trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it. Build your wealth in the dark. Educate yourself. Learn the rules of the game they think they are playing. Let them underestimate you. Let them mistake your silence for weakness. And then, when the time is right, use the cold, hard truth to legally burn their delusions to the ground. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, or if you just love a perfectly executed, legally binding checkmate, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next story.